Sabona, one word that can change your life. Coming up next from Lincoln Center live on Cliff's Notes. Real estate agents, are you struggling with the day-to-day grind, dialing for dollars, putting in hours of floor time with little to show for it? Are you looking for tips, tricks, and tactics to accelerate your career as an agent that will have you closing more homes, working with more clients, and earning more money than ever before? Hi, my name's Cliff Freeman, and I've spent the past 2 decades of my real estate career running one of the top brokerages in DFW and personally coaching over 1,000 high-performing real estate professionals across North America. I created this podcast to share the strategies and tactics you need to explode your real estate business. I guarantee it. And I do guarantee it again today. Once again, you're going to get your cup filled, and I'm going to introduce our very special guest here in just a moment. But we got to do our check-in with Elvis Trelvis back there in the control room. Trelvis, how you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing a lot better now that I'm looking at you. I can guarantee you that. Man.
I told you, man, my week gets complete here when I get to spend some time just hanging around. That force field that you got is so nice to be in, and we're doing great.
I like it.
We got anything that we want to update on the sports end of things today?
You know what? The Cowboys are playing the Steelers, I think, on Sunday. So we kind of got that to look forward to, you know. You never know what can happen. They might actually show up this Sunday.
Well, I don't know. That could be. I think they're going to be competing. Isn't the bowling? Don't they have a bowling show on right across from that?
I may need to watch that instead of the game just to save myself the pain. We'll see, though. We'll see.
We'll see how it goes. No, we love the Cowboys, especially when they win, right?
Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Without further ado, folks, let's go ahead and let's take the wide-angle shot here. I got to introduce you to my friend Lars Lofstrand. He is from East Texas, okay, originally.
I normally say way south Texas, south of the equator.
Way south, yes, that's right, south of the equator. If you don't recognize that Texas accent, it's from Durban, actually,
Durban,
right? It's
South
where you were
Africa,
born and raised?
Yes.
Right? And not far from Durban and in that Natal, that part of South Africa, that's actually a large concentration of Zulu folk there, isn't it?
Well, the Zulu, they're the biggest tribe in Africa. And that's where I'm from, KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu, that's why they call it KwaZulu-Natal,
exactly.
right? Okay, and also the largest population of Indians outside of India.
100%.
History
I'm surprised
there.
you know that. I normally got to tell people that.
Yeah, well, it's because they used to raise sugar cane, right, in there. And
it's actually where Gandhi got his law license, Mahatma Gandhi.
That's
if you
correct.
Know who Mahatma Gandhi is.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
he's
world
a legend.
famous. Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi, yeah. Well, this is incredible. So when I did our little intro today, I threw out a word that probably people were wondering what in the heck I said, and the word was Sabona. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah.
Is that pretty close?
Yeah, Sawubona.
Sawubona, yeah.
So I'll tell you a little story about that Sawubona. So, in my province we have, as you said, the Zulu tribe. And if you know anything about Africa, it's a very poor country. But in my province of KwaZulu-Natal, nobody goes without food. Nobody goes, poor, because we have an ancient culture called the spirit of Ubuntu. And if you look at Ubuntu, directly translated means I am who I am because of who you are. And you'll notice that everything the Zulu people do is with the spirit of Ubuntu. So when somebody's struggling, the community will take them in because of the spirit of Ubuntu. But you'll see if you witnessed how 2 Zulu people greet each other, just like you did with me this morning, they'll say Sawubona, and Sawubona directly translated means I see you. And the person being greeted would answer Sikona, which means I am here. So if you look at even in their greeting, how they acknowledge, each other's humanity as they go with the spirit of Ubuntu. So, I kind of like that because I look at the companies that we coach, the companies that I've owned, and we try and have that spirit of Ubuntu. And we were talking about this at lunch where, nobody is self-made. You always hear somebody say, oh, he's a self-made millionaire. I don't believe that anybody is self-made. In fact, we are made or unmade about everybody we come into contact with. So I think that's something good to talk about with EXP because I know you're at EXP. So.
It is. And in those few words, we could spend probably probably the entire afternoon just unpacking what all that means and everything. So let's go back to the Zulu greeting, which means I see you. It doesn't just mean I physically see you. It means I'm almost like I experience you and your spirit and your family and
Correct.
who you are, right?
Yes.
And it differs because in this country, when you walk up to somebody and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" and "Oh, fine," go to heck, get out.
Yeah.
You don't have time for that. It's a very different greeting, and it's because of the intertwine between the spirit and the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so why is that important to understand, and why are we even talking about that right now?
Well, I think it's because as you say, it's acknowledging each other. If you look at the world, I mean, just look at the elections today, and I don't want to get into political speech, but how divided America is at the moment. So I would say that America could use with a little bit of the spirit of Ubuntu. I am who I am because of who you are. With that being said, I think it's also important to understand that, there needs to be an opposition in all things. There's actually a saying, there needs to be an opposition in all things. You don't know sweet unless you know bitter. So although we're going through hard times now with COVID, we're going through hard times now with elections, those are good for you because they make you appreciate good times. Bad times make you appreciate good times.
Exactly.
So I think that's why it's important,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I think of my children and other children. We all have the experience of being in the shopping market, the supermarket, and the screaming kid, wanting the cookies and all of that kind of stuff. And it's interesting that what you said was we need that something to push against, right? Mm-hmm. And what I like to refer to as gravity. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have gravity holding us down on the ground, we'd all be floating up in the air. And gravity can come in the forms of not just the Earth's gravity, but gravity in terms of your values. You need things to hold you, right? That you can hold true to and help you with structure and just developing your whole sense and your core values are so important. So that sort of notion of we need to experience the conflict. Who was it that said if you don't ever have your down, you'll never know what the good is like, right?
I like that.
And that's so true right now. So are you saying there's a silver lining somewhere in here in this mess that we're in?
Well, I like to think so. I like to, be positive about things that happen to you because, I believe that things happen to you for a reason. One of my favorite quotes is, and I think it's about James Allen, I stand to be corrected, but he says that as friction sharpens a pencil, so adversity sharpens a man. So, often, and I think we've been conditioned to believe that, bad things that happen to us are actually bad for you, when in actual fact they're not. Think about anything in your life that you have got that's of value that didn't come hard or that you didn't have to work for. The challenge with society today, and I think especially here in America, is we do have it easy. And sometimes having it easy is not where the value is. I mean,
right.
In fact, I arrived here in 2009. It was just around the crash. And I remember I was doing a speaking circuit around America, and people in the audience would, often speak to me afterwards and say, "Oh, we've got it really hard. We had to get rid of our third car." And you've visited my country. Some people don't even have shoes to wear.
Right.
So getting rid of your third car, you're still blessed. So I think it's all about a paradigm, and I think that we need to have a paradigm shift.
I had the pleasure of having dinner with some of our colleagues last night, and Gogo, who's from Detroit, is part of our EXP family, and she's just she's a Hall of Fame Instagrammer and great real estate agent, and she's also an immigrant. And she was talking about how she set foot in this country at a very young age without a nickel. I mean, I think she had $200 that she borrowed from somebody to get over here, and that was her start. Mm-hmm. And I've studied a lot of successful real estate agents, and they've been on this show. Veronica Figueroa. I can go through and just run through the list of women in particular who have had huge struggles that they've overcome. And what I have seen from my chair is that what has given them this just incredible. It's almost like a supernatural power. Mm-hmm. You know how you've read about, and I talked about this last week, about how someone would see a car on fire on the side of the road with a person in the car trying to get out, or underneath the car, and they would find the strength within to lift the car up off the no way possible, mm-hmm. right? But it's that kind of inner passion and strength and persistence that I think a lot of people in this country have never had the benefit of. And it's because sometimes you have to go down to your knees in order to get back up and go higher, right?
Well, it's a great comment. I think if you look at, and just thinking about something now, you talk about passion, and I think passion is an essential thing to have, but to really understand what it means to be passionate, you would have to look at where the word passion comes from. Do you know where it comes from?
No.
So if you look at the word passion, it's a Latin word, and I think it's pronounced passion or something like that, but it's a Latin word which directly translated means to suffer. So passion means to suffer. So, for example, if you a religious person, the passion of the Christ means the suffering of the Christ.
Yes.
And
yes.
Why do I share that with you? Because if you think about, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, think about anything of value that you have in your life. It probably came with a little bit of struggle. And think about anything that you want in life and ask yourself this question: are you truly passionate about it? Because we use the word passion. Oh, I'm passionate about this, or I'm passionate about that. But here's really the litmus or the acid test for passion, is that ask yourself this question: that thing that you want, are you willing to suffer for it? Are you willing to work for it? Are you willing to sacrifice for it? And I can tell you, if you're not, it's probably just a nice thing to have. You're not really passionate about it. So I think we have to relook at what we really believe what our passions are.
So let's see how this applies. Talk about how it applies to our business, to real estate, and to agents who get into the business. We all get into the business for the same three reasons. We want to have our own business, have our own schedule, and want the promise of untold wealth, right? Everybody gets the first two, all right? Yeah. Hardly anybody gets the last one. Yeah. Why is that?
We were talking about this at lunch. The human brain is a very unique and special thing. It's good for you, but it can also be bad for you. So if you look at the brain, it's divided into two parts, two forms of thinking. The first part, which makes up about 13% of your thinking, is what's known as the conscious mind. We know what we know. The other part of your thinking, which makes up about 87% of your thinking, is what's known as the subconscious or the unconscious mind. And we don't know what we don't know, but just because we don't know it consciously doesn't mean it's not there. So if you look at the primary role of the subconscious mind, is to protect us from pain. And if that subconscious mind sees in any way that you're going to have pain in any way or form, it gets your conscious mind to do certain things. So here's the challenge with that, is that because most people, and I see this with people I coach, with companies that I coach, and people I come into contact with, most people do not have a strategy in their life. And strategy is what gives you direction. So if your mind can't see it, your mind will go into protection mode. So it'll protect you from immediate pain, but get you into a long-term problem. That makes sense? And that's kind of why we also fail, because we fail because of ourselves, not because of things around us.
Well, wait a minute. People don't have a strategy. Look, when I was born, it didn't come with an owner's manual, okay? Where do you find a strategy for life?
That's a good question. So, a lot of things in life don't come with an owner's manual. We have to learn them the hard way. So, by the time we've learned most of the lessons we have, I see in my own life, some of the lessons I'm learning now and I'm getting on is, I wish I knew those things when I was 20, 30 years old.
Oh, don't we all wish? Boy, we would be quite dangerous.
Exactly.
Yes, if we,
But so that's kind of what my company does too, is we help people find a strategy. So let's look at strategy for a second, because we throw the word strategy around very willy-nilly and very loose. Is that a word, willy-nilly?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So strategy involves three fundamental things to start off with. The first one is you've got to know what your purpose is. And your purpose is, and we spoke about this at lunch too, is your why. Why you really do what you do. And it's your core why. And, I've interviewed thousands of people, and I'm yet to meet somebody, and this is a huge claim to make, I'm yet to meet somebody who consciously knows why they do what they do. When I ask them, why do you do this? They tend to give me the what and not the why. And then I'll say, well, why do you want that? And then why do you want that? So finally it comes out of their subconscious of why they're really doing something. So that's the first part, that's purpose. The second thing we need to understand is vision. And vision is basically what gives you direction. And vision, loosely in the personal development industry, is deemed as how would we put it? It's deemed as something that we want. How do they put it? I'm trying to remember now. It's how would you describe vision?
Vision would be like a goal with,
And it is. It's a bigger goal.
Yeah,
it's more than goals.
It's a bigger goal. A vision is where you want to lead people. In other words, you have a vision about your company and you want it to be this, and that's what leaders use. You know, is communicating the vision of what they see.
Well, so here's what vision is deemed as in the personal development industry. It's a dynamic picture of the future.
Perfect. Yeah.
So,
I like that. Yeah.
Here's the challenge I have with that, because that's the thing that has basically, what started the motivation industry, and I think it actually comes from the Bible, believe it or not, but it says, without vision, the people perish. But if you look at the word vision, originally it was translated from Greek, I believe, what the scriptures were first written in, and when they translated to English, it got lost in translation. But if you really look at the Greek word for vision, it means inspiration. And how does that affect vision then? So if you look at it, without vision, the people perish. So the whole motivation industry is built on that. Oh, we've got to have this goal, and we've got to strive for this dynamic picture. The challenge with that is that, we don't know where we're going. So it's almost not a good thing to say that's where I want to go. And if you look at the motivational industry or the goal setting industry, in fact, there was a study that came out a few years ago that found that people who set goals are sometimes far worse than people who don't set goals. And that's not because goal setting is flawed per se, but how we apply goal setting is flawed. So let me ask you this. What do you think, what would most people say is most important? The destination or the journey? The end result or the process? What would most people say?
The end result.
The end result.
Yeah, and that's why we were in all the trouble that we're in now today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you control? Do you control the end result, or do you only control the process?
Exactly.
So the process is the only thing we control. So if you look at that, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier, and you asked me the question, how do you get out of this slump that you're in? You've got to lay down, you've got to have the strategy, you've got to have a vision, you've got to have a purpose. And I'm still getting on to the last one, which you kind of started talking off about in the beginning, which is values. If you look at values, are decision-making tools. Most people don't know what their values are, their true values. And if you want to see somebody's values, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. And that's a big difference. And that's the same with, if you want to see the belief of an individual, listen to what they say. If you want to see the faith of an individual, watch what they do. And watching what somebody does actually shows what they value. So I can tell you all day long, I got 4 kids, I can tell you I love them until I'm blue in the face. But if you never see me acting on that, you never see me loving them, do I really love them?
Right.
And that's the important about the values. Not only important about having values, is about knowing what your values are. And very few people know that.
Yeah, they sometimes say if you want to judge a person, take a look at their kids or their dog and see how they behave.
I've never heard the dog part, but I've heard about the kids part.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, this kind of goes back to the end justifying the means. When you said, is it the end or the journey? And when the end justifies the means, then you have all the crap that's happening in the world. Well, I say the world locally here anyway, right now, where people are doing anything to get to the justify the means. I mean, when the end is the goal. So let's sort of see if we can kind of break this down a little bit. I mean, we're kind of at this level up here, and you did talk about values. Let's take it down here a little bit to somebody who's in our audience, for example. Say we've got an agent out there. I know I'm speaking to somebody right now who is struggling. They feel like that everything that they do is going wrong. They're not able. They've had deals blow up. The COVID thing hurt their business. Whatever. How do we help somebody like that with a strategy, or how do we help them make that transition or get that breakthrough so that they can turn their life and their business around?
Well, that's a great question. Here's the challenge: is that everybody wants change, but nobody's willing to pay the price to make that change. So the first thing I would say to that is, and this is what I do when I'm qualifying somebody, I make sure that they really want to change, because on the offset they'll say yes, they want to change, but then when they see what it takes to change, most people go back to their old habits. So I think that's a very important thing to understand.
But why do they do that? Why do they resist change and go back to their old habits?
Because it's safe. And that's the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will always try and keep you immediately safe, protect you from immediate danger.
Okay, so this goes back to what you brought up earlier, which is that sort of fight or flight,
yes.
The way that we're designed. the amygdala hijack is
Yes.
what I said. I think
Yes.
at lunch. It's a big word I learned in reading psychology. I thought it was
He's
cool.
been dying to use that
I
word.
have. It's like quintessential. I like that word a lot too, right? But Travis is back there laughing. I like SAT words. What can I say?
Yeah.
You know, that's just it. But you know, the bottom line is if we don't learn how to control that and have the self-discipline to know what voice we're hearing, right? And,
Yes.
and is that, I mean, how do we do that? How do you give me I want a implementation strategy is what I'm looking for, Lars.
Well, so, you know, it's common sense. The problem with common sense is that it's not that common. And the challenge with the human being is we think that things are so complex, and it's not really. I mean, the human being is actually a very, very simple creature, but we complicate things for ourselves. So to answer your question, it's very simple. So going back to that strategy, having the strategy is a critical thing to have. Firstly, why you do what you do. So let's go through those again.
Okay.
Why you do what you do is, in other words, that's the thing that drives you. That's the reason you get out of bed. If you don't have that, do you think many people are motivated?
Well, I mean, you have to have a big why. I know,
And very
for
few
sure.
people have that. So
Right.
very few people have that.
Yeah.
And even with the big why, and I know they talk about that at certain brokerages, they talk about the big why. And I actually taught at a brokerage where the big why was their big thing, you know. And when I looked at the big why, and when people were writing down what their big why was, they weren't whys, they were actually whats. So we're chasing stuff.
So, like, give me an example. Like,
My big why is, well, let's use one that most people use, my family.
okay.
If you look at the family, it's still a what. Why would you want to love your family? Why would you want to have a good family? Because ultimately we want what it brings us. So let's use the example of money. You know, often people say, they want money. Nobody wants money. We want what money can buy us.
Options.
Big difference.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we want what money can buy us. So it's what's in it for us that we want in return. So,
Okay.
for example, you know, I'm nice to somebody. Why? Because I want them to be nice back to me.
Mm-hmm.
When they're not nice back to me, what happens to me being nice to them? I'll do to a point of capacity where I realize, actually, I'm not getting anything in return. So let me give this portion of love I'm giving to this person and give it somewhere else. And that's kind of just how we're designed as human beings, because by nature, we are born selfish. By nature, we are born selfish.
But aren't we born selfish for survival, though?
Yes.
Isn't that?
Yes.
It's not bad that we're born selfish.
No, not at all.
That's
It's a
what
survival thing.
keeps you alive,
Of
right?
course.
Initially.
Of course.
Right.
Unfortunately, it goes against almost a principle where, you know, if you want, and I think Zig Ziglar said it the best. He says, if you give enough people what they want, you'll always get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But what are most of us trying to do? We're trying to get before we give.
Exactly.
And that's why if you look at us, if you look at the word give, it comes from the word gift. A gift is a gift is a gift. The problem is we don't really give a gift. You know, I was thinking about it, and
So you mean so we have the expectation of something in return?
we all do.
Right.
We
okay.
all do.
So Tony Robbins says that the top of the living pyramid is being able to give without the expectation of anything in return, right?
The challenge is, as human beings, most of us don't have the capacity to give in that way. And you've got to remember something, that it's not an absolute.
Well, now wait a
it's
minute.
degree.
Wait. Now, we're not talking about giving cars and giving money for college and stuff like that. What kind of giving are you talking about?
Giving of yourself.
Okay.
Giving love, giving kindness.
Now, why isn't somebody capable? Because we should have unlimited love in our bank account, right? In our love account.
We don't, though. That's
Why?
the challenge. It's just how we're built. You know, when we're born, we're born positive, conditioned negative. So if you look at a child, they say by the age of 2 years old, a child hears 18 no's for every one yes. But if you look at a young child, they can literally do anything. I'll never forget my son, you know, when he was very young, he used to love Spider-Man, and he told me, he said, you know, I can climb a wall like Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah.
And I said, you know, no, you can't. He says, yes, I can. So then he goes onto the wall, so I pick him up. And I put him on the wall, and I put him down, and he says, you see, I just walked on the wall. But kids are very positive, you know, they're born positive. Kids can do anything. If you ask them, can you do this? Absolutely they can
Sure.
do it, even though they physically can't.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset thing, and I know we were talking about that, and that's why if you look at your mindset, which comes down back to an attitude, is very, very important, because an attitude is like a camera. You know, whatever I focus on, if I focus my camera on you, am I going to get a picture of this side of the room?
Right.
No, I won't.
Yeah.
So whatever you focus on is what you get. So if you're very negatively minded, or if you have a negative attitude, that's exactly what you're going to get.
What we say is if you're focused on the trees down the slope, you're going to hit the trees.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's the same with golf. I'm not a golfer, but when I do play golf, somebody tells me, there's a water trap. Don't think about the water
Right.
trap. What
Forget
I do,
about it. Yeah. Forget about the water.
Where does
It's
it go?
not there.
Straight
Right.
into the water trap.
Exactly.
And that's kind of how the law of attraction works.
Yeah.
Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. So if you want to attract something different, you'd have to fundamentally change who you are, and that's where the strategy comes in again.
Well, that's interesting. So how important is it for your circle of influencers, your circle of friends, the people that you spend the most time with?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Who should these agents be hanging around?
Well, it depends what you want to get. If you want to be successful, you've got to hang around with successful people. So, and I mean, it's that
Is
simple.
that easy?
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, because we absolutely allow people, just because we're not perfect, we allow things to affect us. And we all do. I mean, I teach this and I still allow things to affect us. In fact, if you look at it, they say that, that person made me mad. Nobody can make you mad.
Right.
You can only choose to be mad, or, nobody can offend you. They can be offensive, but being offended is a choice. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I got a great story about choice, though. So
Do you have a story? You want to tell it now, or what?
Yes. So there was these two identical twins that they followed, and I believe it was in the 40s or 50s, somewhere around there. And there was always this question amongst psychologists: is are you who you are because of nature, or are you who you are because of nurture? So nature is the way you're born. Nurture is how you're conditioned. So there was always this thing: are you born that way, or are you made that way? So what they did was they followed these two identical twins. Let me tell you about these twins. These identical twins, so they're the same in nature. If you know anything about identical twins, they have the same DNA.
Right. Yeah.
These twins, then, they were born into a household, same parents obviously, had the same friends, went to the same church, went to the same school. So they had the same conditioning. They had an abusive alcoholic as a father who on a regular basis used to beat the mother, and they would get beatings too. And here's what they found later on in life as they followed these boys. The one boy became an abusive alcoholic like a father. The other boy became the exact opposite. He became a loving father and husband. They were both asked the same question: why did you become who you are? What do you think their answer was?
It's the way I was raised.
Okay. What they said was, and they had the same answer, they said, because of my father.
Because of my father.
Because of my father. So here's the difference. Because
sure.
remember,
Okay.
same
right.
nature, and you're born the same.
Yeah.
Same nurture. Grew up the same conditioning. Yet they became polar opposites. Why? They
Right.
said, because of my father. One chose to be like the father.
One chose to be the opposite.
So
Right.
are you who you are because of nature or nurture?
So, yeah.
Or because of the choices you make?
Right. I was kind of leaning that way, because when you're raised that way, you're either attracted to it or you're repelled from it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was thinking is...
Well, your conditioning, your environment can affect your choices, but at the end of the day, it's still your choice. Somebody is offensive,
Right.
you choose to be offended, somebody else doesn't.
So what is that control mechanism inside of us, that switch that we can we flip that switch and determine which way we're going to come out of the situation? Let me see if I can put it another way. Do you think either one of those twins had any influence themselves over the way they turned out, or was it predetermined how they were going to turn out?
I believe that there's certain aspects of us that are predetermined. I think we're born with certain traits. But I think with those traits we develop because of the choices we make, or fail to make, for that matter. In fact, it's, they call it sins of omission or sins of commission. Mm-hmm. So things you do wrong or things you fail to do. Which ones do you think are more destructive to us?
Probably things you fail to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, and this is what I don't like about the motivation industry, because it becomes rah-rah and everybody says you're born to succeed. We're actually not born to succeed. We were born to fail. Think about anything you tried for the first time. Did you succeed?
Right. No.
So the first time you tried to eat, there was more food all over you than anywhere else. But in failing is where you succeed.
Right.
So that's where the value is. So that's why, as friction sharpens the pencil, so adversity sharpens the man. If we really understood, where the value of growth was, we'd wake up every day and look for the hardest things in our life to do that day. But what do most of us do because of our conditioning? We look for the easy path.
The easy button.
The easy
They even
part.
made one of those, an easy
Correct.
button.
And that's the challenge, easy is not where the value is. But it's tough because, and I'm not talking about just beating yourself up for no reason. But I'm saying that, the things that happen to us in life are there for a reason. And you will keep getting those challenges until you learn the lesson. The problem is that, we don't learn the lesson. And that's why I always say, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear.
Right.
So it's about getting the pupil right, which means self-developing, looking at yourself. But what are most of us conditioned to do? Blaming everybody around us. And going off what you said earlier, now it's funny. I had a client the other day. He was telling me, so he brought me in to consult, and he was saying, he's had these 4 or 5 different guys leave, and then he was telling me, that guy's terrible, this guy's complaining about the people that he hired and fired. And I asked him this one question. I said to him, who's the common denominator? And he said, well, I am. So I said, well, then that's what we need to fix. Because who hired those people? You did. Yet you're blaming them. So there's something wrong that you're doing. If you didn't do those things, you wouldn't have attracted or hired those people.
Exactly, right.
So and that's that's coming back to your question, is that, we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to be responsible for what it is that we get in life. Here's the challenge, though, is that most of us are blaming somebody or something in our lives.
Victims.
We have a victim mentality, and all of us have that in some way or form.
Sure.
So that's the challenge.
Yeah, interesting. So how important are hanging around people that have core values that are consistent with yours?
Very important, because you can be influenced by that. You still make the choice, but you definitely got a better chance if you hang around people that are positive. The chances are you'll become more positive. If you hang around negative people, chances are you'll become more negative. And that's just how we are as human beings. We're very influential. We're very influenced, by our surroundings. But at the end of the day, and I don't want to cheapen that, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't matter what happens to you in life. It's still how you choose to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So here's a great example. Let me give an example quickly. So poor people. Poor people, they're always complaining that they're poor because...
now that's a mindset, by the way.
It's an absolute mindset.
That is a mindset.
It's a mindset.
Being broke is temporary.
Yeah.
But
most people who are broke end up staying broke. Why? Because they choose to be, not consciously, subconsciously. They don't even know they're doing it. They're self-sabotaging, and that's what most of us do. We self-sabotage. You are who you are because of who you are. Here's a great saying too. I learned this many, many years ago. I mean, you visited South Africa, and a lot of people are emigrating. I met this guy because, this is my second tour here. I used to live here 20 years ago, and then I went back, and then I came back again. But I'll never forget meeting a South African guy, and people complain in South Africa how bad it is, so they leave. And I met this guy in Houston. I knew him in South Africa, and he would complain in South Africa. Then I met him in Houston, and he was still complaining. And then I thought about this quote that I heard once, that it says, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are.
Something about, bloom where you're planted, something like that. Yeah.
And that's a choice.
Right.
So if you don't fix that at the core, if you don't fundamentally fix who you are, you'll always get what you get.
Yeah. I often go back to the Success Principles by Jack Canfield, and one of my favorite, and I know if you don't like math, it's okay, it's not a hard one, it's E plus R equals O, and that is when there's an event in life, you add your reaction to that to get the outcome. So the variable, the independent variable that you can maneuver, the dependent variable that you can maneuver or change is the reaction, right? But life happens, and it's how you react to it that determines your state. Well,
so let me ask you this, because that's a very good comment. But let's go back to your original question you asked based on what you're saying. So we know that, right? Why don't we do it?
That's my point, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second.
So is that because we're disconnected with our why, or?
I think that is where our conditioning can have an effect on us. So let me explain and go back into the brain. So if you look at anything, let's take the cell phone as an event. An event happens to us. That event is largely neutral. But what happens is, because of the filters we have, which are developed, from our youth and everything that happens to us, so some conditioning, we interpret that event and we create what we call a story. Our interpretation of the event. What your brain then does, because it's there to protect you from pain, and your brain doesn't want to be wrong, it wants to prove you right, it then goes to look for evidence to prove your story right. And then the last thing we have is then truth.
So you get a
It makes it true.
justified bullshit
Yes.
story.
So we call it truth,
Yeah.
but is it truth or a perception of truth? And that's the challenge. So
That's
if you look
right.
at, to answer your question,
Yeah.
how do you change that? You've got to go back to what your original filter's on. We've got to literally, and my company's called Rewire X. You've literally got to rewire how you think. You've got to rewire what you do. And you change how you think and who you are with baby steps, as Oprah says, line upon line, precept upon precept. The challenge is none of us, or very few of us, have a mechanism because we're not taught it in any schools. We don't have a mechanism or a system or a strategy to do that. And that's the challenge. So most of us stay where we're at. Most people stay poor. Why? Because that's all they know.
Right.
And
But on the
safe.
other hand, the average self-made millionaire has been broke 7 times.
I read that the other day.
Yeah.
I read that the other day, yes.
I thought that was pretty interesting. But again, it goes back to, you have to have the competing forces to know, the pressure, the balance, and which way you want to be, right?
Well, that goes back to the saying, there needs to be an opposition in all things. You have to have the
Gravity,
opposite of
I like
something.
it. Yeah.
You can't have sweet without bitter. You can't have happiness without heartache.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more. I'm going to look at our time here, but tell us a little bit more about your business and what motivated you. What was your passion that got you to start Rewire? What was the driving thing that gets you out of bed in the morning?
that's a great question. So like most people, we get into something because of what's in it for us. And I think I got into the motivational industry. It was a bad... when I grew up, I just got out the army, I'll never forget. And I actually posted about this 2 days ago because my dad commented on something that I'd said. And I reminded him, I said, Dad, do you remember that when I got out the army, I was at a very low place in my life. And I think I was 21, 22, around there. And he put me through the self-development course that he was on. He had somebody he was a client of. They were doing personal development. He put himself on this course. I enjoyed the course so much because I learned things about myself I didn't know.
Yes.
And I repeated the course 6 times because I'm a very slow learner. And that's kind of the catalyst that got me into the industry. I went into some other businesses before that, but later on in life, because I was doing self-development as a consumer. But I fell in love with the self-development industry, and I ended up getting into, almost by accident, into the industry. I'd opened a chemical company in Houston the first time I came, lost $1 million on that deal. I was kind of, couldn't even put food on the table. And a company approached me out of Waco, and they did psychological profiling for businesses. And I got into that company, and that was my leap or my step into the self-development industry. I met a guy who had a program very similar to the one that I went on, and I learned that, I sold it, I trained it, I shared it with people, and I became passionate about it. So to answer the question, I got into the industry because I was broken. I wanted to fix myself. That was the main reason. I ended up helping fix other people's.
Yeah. So the reason I want to bring this up is I've got a bunch of old Tony Robbins tapes, the cassette tapes and stuff that sit next to my Carlton Sheets tapes and my it was at Alex Karras, the guy that did the negotiation course and all that stuff. But Tony did a Netflix. By the way, if you haven't seen it, it's great. It's called "I'm Not Your Guru."
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
And he continues to say, "I am not a motivator. I'm not a motivation person." Are you different than? Do you do stuff that's different than what Tony does?
Well, I agree with his statement there, so how we do it is different. So I think at the core, we're probably the same. So we have the same motive or purpose is to help people. Mm-hmm. He does it in more very flamboyant. Tony, he's a rock star and he's entertaining. So he's selling an aspect of entertainment, and behind that, there's the message. Whereas what I do is not as sexy as what Tony does. So we kind of, he's the engineer, we're the mechanic. And so we try put programs together that actually get people to execute, because here's the challenge. You can go on a course and know what you should be doing. By not doing it, that course becomes the very thing you used to beat yourself up with, because now you know you should be doing it and you don't.
Yeah. And we know the tenure with most coaches and so forth can be really short. You were mentioning Covey and his challenge of keeping people in his coaching program because they got to a certain point and they just disappeared, right? So there is a need for that glue to keep the dots connected, right, as you go through. And coaching and changing your life is not a pill that you take. And I've been to UPW and walked on fire, and it was great. And I love Tony Robbins, but I got to tell you, it's taken me months and months and years, really, to continue to refine my own self and to learn self-leadership and self-discipline. So what is your perfect client? Who is your perfect client, Lars?
I get asked that often, and sometimes I look at somebody and I think, that guy really needs help. He's the perfect client. But then I go back to what I said earlier. If the pupil is not ready, the teacher can't appear. So my perfect client is somebody who's ready for change, truly ready for change, and willing to put in the work to change. Because if you look at change is a process, not an event. So if you look at a Tony Robbins as example, and I love Tony Robbins, by the way, but if you look at a Tony Robbins, he's largely an event. An event can trigger you off to take the step into the process. The challenge is most of us don't have a good process to keep us in that mindset and keep us executing.
Yeah.
So most people have a problem with execution, not with having a plan, but executing that plan. And that's really where the strength lies, in being able to execute that plan. Right. So what we do in a nutshell with RewireX, because you asked me that, was we help people create and execute a strategy every 90 days, because it's something that's cyclic.
Okay.
It's iterative. You have to learn over and over again.
I love it. I use the term a rolling 90-day plan.
Yeah.
We're always looking 90 days out.
That's all because you can't think much further than that.
Right.
I mean, think about it. Last year, did you ever envision where you would be today?
Oh my gosh! Sometimes 90 minutes, let alone 90 days. Right? I mean, holy cow! You just never know.
Well, they say we got an attention span. What is it, like 4.3 minutes or something? We get distracted.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're still watching the show, thank you. We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. True. Now, you've got some things on your website that you actually put out there just to help people, right? I mean, you have tools that you make available to people who aren't even your clients.
Yes.
Right? Tell us how people can
the best thing to do is actually, we got a Facebook group which is called Explore Entrepreneur Academy. So we call it Entrepreneur Academy. And I know I say entrepreneur very different in American.
He's not from Texas, right?
Entrepreneur, I think is how usually I say it. So people can go join that group. So it's Explore Entrepreneur Academy on Facebook. It's free, and there's a lot of resources on there, and that's probably the best place to go. Our website's kind of more like a brochure, and we're redoing those, but I think that Facebook group will give you a head start into what it is that we do.
So you can actually engage there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and ask questions and that sort of thing.
I think that's kind of how we met too.
I believe,
I think your son
my
followed me on there.
C3, Trellis is, that's right. And, C3, we miss you, man. You should be sitting.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd be on the show today.
Here, and,
I haven't seen him for a while.
I guess, can I make it public? He got back from Tulum from a wedding, and let's just say he wasn't feeling well, so he's going to be, taking it easy for the next 10 to 14 days, if that gives you a hint. All right.
You just blew his social calendar for the next 14 days.
Right. And Britton, thank you for being so patient with him. Yes, for sure. Lars, we're kind of quickly approaching the end of the show here, but is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have today?
Let's talk about an EXP story.
Sure. Yep.
So, you talk about regrets. So, Rob Flick, who's my upline in EXP.
Gosh.
Rob and Gene.
I'm going to start crying.
So, shout out to Rob and Gene.
Yeah.
They approached us, and I think at the time they had something like 500 or 600 odd agents. And I had a real estate brokerage which I owned with another business partner, actually two. So my business partner I still have today, and another business partner we're no longer in business with. And they approached us, and there was talk about, EXP was obviously very small. It was 600 people, and they were talking about expanding. And Rob used to come to my training. He loved my training and coaching, was always trying to get me into EXP. In fact, he was trying to get our intellectual property into EXP because he knew how big my brokerage grew from like 30 people to a couple of hundred people. And anyway, there was talk about if we joined EXP, and I'm trying to remember how long ago, this is a couple of years ago, but it's when they had 600 people. So you guys do the math whenever that was. But there was talk about buying our company. If you join us, we will give you X amount. And I'll share with you the amount was. So they said $200,000. join EXP, but those $200,000 would be given to us in shares. Okay, and at the time the shares were penny stocks, you know. But still, it ended up being for that $200,000, and this is a very tough story for me to tell you. For those $200,000, it equated to 1 million shares. We didn't take the deal. I and my current business partner wanted to take the deal, but my other business partner, who was the majority, there's a 51-49 split in the in the partner agreement. He chose not to, and we were saying, this is the future. He says, but there's only 600, and they're unwritten book. I said, this is the way
you don't want to wait until
1 million shares.
Right. Yeah.
You tell me something, because I saw what it was the other day. But what is the share price today?
I think it's mid-40s right now.
When I looked at it the other day, it had gone to, I think it was 59.
Yeah, it's hit 60. Yeah.
So think about this, and this is to you EXP agents, or not EXP agents, but people that are thinking about coming aboard to EXP. We didn't back then. If we had taken that deal, we had 1 million shares. If I'd sold those shares at $59, equate what that is.
That's pretty easy math to do, I think. Yeah.
Probably the biggest business mistake we've ever
That's
made.
a lot of shekels. Yeah.
So if you're contemplating joining EXP, don't wait.
You know,
it is the future.
Yeah, you can ask anybody who's with EXP now what their biggest regret is, and you know what every one of them say?
Time.
I wish I hadn't joined
Yeah,
earlier.
That's most people.
Yeah.
That's the same people with the personal development we do.
Yeah.
They delay and they see it because they just don't believe in themselves, so they don't take that leap of faith.
Well,
when they finally do, they say, I wish I'd done this when I first
And
met you."
everybody needs to understand success lies beyond your comfort zone. You
100%.
have to take risks in life.
100%.
If you don't, you never get rewards.
100%.
It's risk reward. They call it that
100%.
for a reason, right? Yeah.
Very true.
Lars, you're awesome, man. I am
you.
so stoked about our show today, and I know we really hit some people right between the eyes that we're watching, and I hope that impact stays with them, and I hope they follow up and contact you or contact me for just a conversation. I mean, isn't that things start with a conversation?
Yes, 100%.
And no obligations at all, but we just. At my age and my season, and of course you do this for a living, is helping people.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I'm here to do until the end. I'm
Well,
here to light candles, man.
And that's what I love about the EXP model is it's designed, and how they've designed it, and the business model. There's incentive for somebody to help you, and incentive's not a bad thing. If you look at other brokerages, you don't want to help somebody. Why? Because they become opposition to you.
That's right.
Whereas how EXP, there's basically 3 paths you can earn money on. So whether you help this person, you're going to get paid in some way or form, and there's an incentive to help.
That's
That's what I love about
it's
the model.
total alignment.
100%.
It's not set up so that we're competing by area, by franchise against each other. There is one EXP. And the collaboration, and again, I could go on for a long time talking about this, but until you've experienced it, it's almost hard to even imagine the energy and the synergy. I mean, I was at dinner last night just, telling everybody I still have to wake up every day, take a knee and pinch myself to make sure that I'm not dreaming, because it's been totally life-changing for me and my family and many great friends of mine who are here with us along this journey. So,
well, I love, just if I can close with something.
Sure.
Jay Kinder, if you know who Jay Kinder is, I don't know if he coined the phrase, but I heard it from him. He says that once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And that is a reality. It's I believe it's at the moment the perfect model in real estate, and that's why they're taking a lot of agents from different brokerages. The other brokerages, they're running scared at the moment.
And at the time, let's give credit where credit's due. Keller Williams was the perfect model when it came in. Before that, Remax. Before that, Ascendant. Century 21.
There's no bad brokerage out there, because even EXP, some people don't fit the model.
Yeah, right.
And that's why I've always said, people always ask me, which is the best brokerage to join? Well, there's no best brokerage per se. There's different business models. What suits you? Because EXP might not suit most people, but it's damn near, if I can use that word here, because I know it's a bad word here, but in South Africa we use it all the time. But it's damn near perfect for a real estate broker.
Yeah, I would say, very much so. Great to see you, man. This has been great. Been a lot of fun.
Baie dankie.
Baie dankie. I love it, man. Goeiemôre, Suid-Afrika. I was on that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Good Morning, South Africa, a long time ago. Dr. Travis?
Yes, sir.
it's so great again to spend my Thursday afternoon with you. Thank you. What'd you think of our guest today?
Man, I got a lot of good knowledge on today's show. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Did you get some rider downers there?
I did. I
Okay.
got a couple laughs in. I got a couple head nods. So I think I got my money's worth out of today's show.
That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you, it's always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. And audience, thank you for being with us today. And EXPCon is coming up around the corner next week. I have to double
That's
check
virtual,
and make
right?
sure it's going to be all virtual. Yeah, which is another thing. If anybody'd like to experience an EXP convention up in the world, contact Lars or me. We got a backstage pass for you. We'll get you in there and make sure you can hang out with us. And I hope that someday they're going to get bathrooms installed in the world. They haven't done that yet. You notice that?
Do they have a water cooler there?
They don't. Well, the place for the chat. Yeah, there's
Is
a
it?
water cooler.
Water cooler.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So anyway, get out and enjoy this beautiful fall weather. Good golf, good tennis, whatever makes you happy. But we'll see you next week here on Cliff's Notes. All right, folks. Tune in to Cliff's Notes every Thursday at 1 o'clock Central for the tips, tricks, and tactics to explode your business. I guarantee it.